Well, I think the first one, why don't we take the one when you were, your first experience going up the lighthouse when you were 6 years old.
I got scared up there. It was dark and spidery.
That ties in very nicely with Susie's commentary about what a scary place it was. Little screens on the windows. She said things flew in at night.
You know, in my memory, it was big enough. It wasn't big, but there was a little staircase that went up. I wasn't climbing a ladder.
Yeah.
I was.
You described it first as kind of a spiral.
Yeah, that's the way I remember it. Does anybody else remember it that way? Huh?
That's the way it would have been. I've heard no other description of the time.
But there wasn't light coming down. I don't know if there was a door or something up there, but it was dark in there. And I went bravely on up, and they shut the door, and boy, get me out. Anyway, when do y'all want to start? And I can start with that.
Okay, why don't we just start with your first experience with the lighthouse there?
Okay. Are we on yet? Can you?
Yes, sir. I'm
hear?
rolling on it. And you sound good. Thank you for the mic check.
All right. We will start at a count of. You gonna give me the count?
I can count you in if you need to.
No, like that.
Have you been in television before or something?
A little bit.
A little bit. Who are you? 3, 2, 1.
I've been asked to talk about Baldwin Wood and this Nydia, the boat behind me. And my first memory of where the boat was kept was at Mr. Wood's house. My parents were visiting, and I was about 6 years old, and they had a lighthouse, a small lighthouse, and I wanted to know if I could climb it. Sure, you can climb it. So they opened the little door, and I got in. They shut the door, and I started up these steps, and it was dark and spider-webby. And I remember as a little 6-year-old, I got scared about halfway up, and I never got to the top of that thing. I told them I wanted out of there. That was my first recollection of Mr. Wood. Later, much later, when I was about 15, I know because I was driving, I would see him out on his pier, and I would pull in and go down on the pier and talk to him. And he had kind of scruffy clothes and a hat. And there were 2 large schooners docked on the T of his pier, and they were very old. He told me that one was copper-clad, which is a method they used to use to keep barnacles off the bottom of ships, even men of war back in the 1700s and 1800s. So that fascinated me. And he said it would be all right for me to go on those boats. They were very narrow and very long, so they were not working boats. I think they were racing yachts of some kind that he had gotten. I don't know what happened to them, but he was tinkering about on them, and he was very courteous to me. And always, when I went there, this vessel was anchored at the mooring buoy. He had a mooring buoy, and I guess that way he didn't have to worry about changing the lines or the Nydia banging against his pier, and it was always anchored out there. And he talked about it and how much he loved the boat and how much he enjoyed sailing it. And he said, I asked him about that, and he said, almost every day that I can. And he said, son, I'll probably die on that boat. It's just a wonderful vessel. I've raced it, and I very much enjoy it. And that's the end of my memories of Mr. Wood. I know that he later gave a huge grant to Tulane, provided they took care of this yacht. And evidently they didn't, and that's why it's here today. Beautiful. I hope the people come out to see it. They've done a wonderful job here at the museum, and it will open soon, I believe. And that's the end of my story.
Son, did you ever meet Nola, his wife?
What?
Did you ever meet Nola, his wife?
No. No, I never did. It was just I would stop when I'd see him out on the pier, all by himself, tinkering about, you know, splicing a line or with a brush or doing something. He was always tinkering. And at that time, on these two older boats, I have no idea whatever happened to them. They
made it to the Albertville where it sank and was.
did it? It had, if I remember right, it had a clipper bow.
One of them had a clipper bow, and didn't another one have? What years were that anyway?
This would have had to have been about 51.
Okay, so that's probably one of those. It wasn't as sleek and beautiful as the other. Whichever one this was, the one that didn't look quite as good, did go to the Albertville and ended up
Did it?
sitting over there, and they dismantled it and all that.
I remember when he said, sure, you can go down, that it was very narrow. There were center borders, both of them, and there were bunks or benches off the side, but there was maybe not that much room on either side of the center board. They were.
I've seen some photos of them sitting out there.
Really?
Sure have.
I'd love to see that and bring back the memory. I would really like to see that.
We're cataloging a bunch of our photos and all
Yeah.
that right now.
I was afraid everything would have been lost when I didn't talk about going back after his death to tour the home. It was open.
About that, because that's something we have very little about, the home itself.
And if I remember, did you go in the home? Were you?
I went in the home as a very young kid. My dad was a hardwood floor guy around here and used to maintain his floors in there.
I was impressed with the shower he designed. Had nozzles all around, just would squirt you from everywhere. And then, if my memory's correct, there was a ballroom on the 3rd floor. And I was impressed with a home built with a ballroom, because that's what they used to do in the, you know, in the 20s. They held parties, and but I believe that that's correct. You'll have to ask Susie, but I think there was a ballroom on the 3rd floor, and the shower was impressive. It just had nozzles everywhere. Of course, he was a hydraulic engineer, the invention of the pumps and all of that, but the shower was everybody commented on it. It was large, and it would squirt you from every direction when you had all these valves all over the place.
Jacuzzi.
Huh?
That may have been the first jacuzzi.
Well, no, you stood in it, but you'd sure get a good shower if you turned all those valves on. But it was a big house, and I think I remember a ballroom up on the 3rd floor.